Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining me for my review of the 2017 film Star Wars The Last Jedi, directed by Rian Johnson and starring Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, Daisy Ridley, John Boyega, and many other actors who all do a very solid job in this film. Before I review this film, since this is the first Star Wars movie I've actually reviewed on my channel, I thought it would be nice to give some background just on my whole experience with Star Wars. The original film, Episode 4, A New Hope, I consider one of the most important films ever made, and also one of the best. It was one of the films that really got me interested in movies. And Return of the Jedi is actually one of my favorite films of all time and my favorite Star Wars film. I also enjoyed the prequels. I know they're very divisive, but I enjoyed most things about them, even though I realize they have some flaws. And I also enjoyed the other two Star Wars films, Force Awakens and Rogue One. I thought were both good films, although I thought that they both could have been better. I thought they had some issues, but overall, I've enjoyed most films in the Star Wars universe. So, with that being said, how did I feel about The Last Jedi, which also seems to be a very divisive film? I've heard a lot of good things, a lot of bad things about this film. I have to say, overall, I really enjoyed this film. I was very satisfied with it. Um, there are a few issues I have with the film, which I'll get into, but I did think this was an excellent Star Wars film. So, some of the things that I really like about this film, Luke Skywalker is my favorite all time Star Wars character. It was great to see Luke back in this film, and I really enjoyed where they took this character. I know some people don't, and I can understand why, but I really like what they did with the character of Luke, and I thought his arc was very satisfying. And Mark Hamill is really great. He's never been better in the role. I also thought Rey was greatly improved from Force Awakens, where I thought her character was okay, but not always convincing. In this film, I really liked what she did, and I thought Daisy Ridley really stepped up her game as well. I actually thought all of the main cast had their moments. I really like how the characters were very balanced in this film, and I felt like each key character, had a moment to shine. I really thought that worked very well. Whoever your favorite character is, I think there's a moment in there for you somewhere that you'll enjoy. And I actually thought the new characters were handled well enough. They weren't like great, they weren't the greatest Star Wars characters of all time, but I thought they were solid and added to the film. Another thing I really enjoyed that surprised me was the dynamic between the villains, which I don't think has always been great or convincing in Star Wars films, but in this film, I really liked the way they worked together, and I thought it was a very interesting part of the story. If maybe slightly underused, I thought some of the villains could have been in the film a bit more, but overall, I was satisfied in that regard. One of the other things I really like about The Last Jedi is that there were a lot of callbacks to other films. There's definitely a little bit of Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi in this film, but I thought it felt more like a callback and not just a copy, whereas I thought Force Awakens was a little bit too much like A New Hope. I thought this movie does stand on its own. I think there's a lot of places they took Last Jedi that were risky, but I thought for the most part they worked and that it made The Last Jedi feel like an original film, which I really appreciated. As far as some other things about the film, John Williams' score is very, very good, as it always is. It's amazing this guy's still composing. It has nothing on the original trilogy score, but what does, that's probably the greatest score of all time, or at least one of them. But I thought Williams still did a solid job of incorporating new music with the classic stuff. I really like the look of this film. The production design is really, really strong. Probably some of the best production design for any Star Wars film, in my opinion, thinking back, definitely up there. Uh, I will say the special effects, surprisingly, were a little bit of a mixed bag for me. I usually love the effects in Star Wars films. I even thought they did a great job in Rogue One, even though I know not everyone agrees with that. In this movie, I thought in a lot of the key scenes, the effects were very strong, which is important. But there were a few times in a few of the other scenes where I actually thought a few things looked fake, weren't totally convincing, and that really surprised me. But it didn't really kill the movie or anything, but I did notice a few things that weren't up to the high Star Wars standard, in my opinion. But overall, the effects are solid. Now, a couple negatives on this film that I do have. The film is 2.5 hours, and I don't necessarily think it was too long, but I think the pacing and just the way some of the scenes were constructed at times was a little bit strange. A few scenes seemed like they kind of came out of nowhere. A few seemed a little rushed. A few seemed a little too long. Felt like some of the editing was just a little off in a few places. Like I said, nothing that really kills the film or hurt my enjoyment that much, but it was noticeable. And one thing I didn't like, there's one kind of action sequence, I guess I'll call it, in the middle of the film. I don't want to spoil anything, but it felt completely out of place and didn't really work for me. It felt like it was in a different film completely. This was the one scene in the movie I really didn't care for at all. But again, it doesn't kill the film. Um, Another thing, this film really doesn't give a lot of answers. Now, I don't expect a film that's the middle movie in a trilogy to reveal everything because we still have one movie to go. But I felt like this movie brought up, more questions and didn't necessarily give satisfactory answers to a lot of things. I felt they could have given us a little more here, but I understand they want us to see the third film, so I guess I can't complain too much about it. I just felt like parts of this film kind of dragged out a few things that didn't need to be dragged out. But overall, I was very satisfied with Star Wars The Last Jedi. I definitely recommend it. I think even though it has a few flaws in it here and there, that the overall impact of the film was very good. But my guess is that for most people, what they feel about this film will be how the character of Luke was handled. If you really enjoy his character arc, I think you'll like this film a lot. If you don't, you're probably going to have a lot of problems with this film. Luckily for me, I enjoyed his character arc, and I enjoyed most of the other character arcs in the film as well. So overall, I do recommend Star Wars The Last Jedi. It did leave something of an impact on me, which is always a great thing. And I look forward to watching the next part of the saga when it comes out in a couple of years. So overall, I'm going to give Star Wars The Last Jedi a 4 out of 5. I do recommend the film for Star Wars fans and just for fans of solid films in general. So 4 out of 5 for Star Wars The Last Jedi. And as always, thank you very much for watching.